The microphone feedback cut through the reception tent like a knife. 250 guests, lawyers, doctors, Atlanta socialites in their designer clothes, all turned their champagne glasses toward the stage where my daughter-in-law stood glowing in her $1,000 lace gown. "Before we move to dinner," Veronique announced, her voice sweet as poisoned honey, "I'd like to make a special announcement." My stomach dropped. Something about the way she looked at me, that smile that never touched her eyes, told me this wasn't going to be good. She stepped down from the stage, heels clicking against the wooden floor they'd installed over my barn dirt, and walked straight toward me. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. Every eye in that tent locked onto us. "Mama Ruthleen," she said into the microphone, loud enough for everyone to hear, "since you've always said this farm is the heart of our family, it's only fair that you hand over the keys, right here, right now, to your son and me. Let's make it official." The world stopped spinning. My heart hammered so hard I could feel it in my throat. Around me, guests whispered behind their hands. Some looked uncomfortable. Others leaned forward like they were watching a reality TV show. I looked at my son, my only child, the boy I'd raised on this land, the man who used to follow his daddy around pretending to fix tractors, and he just stood there. His hand rested on Veronique's waist. His eyes wouldn't meet mine. "Come on, Mama." Veronique's voice rang out again, sharper now beneath that fake sweetness. "You've held on long enough. Give us your blessing, and hand us the keys." The microphone picked up every breath I took. 250 people waited for my response. The band had stopped playing. Even the children had gone quiet. "Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family, enjoy the story." I thought about Elijah, my husband of 50 years who died with dirt under his fingernails and pride in his heart. I thought about every sunrise we'd watched from this porch, every harvest we'd prayed over, every mortgage payment we'd scraped together when the crops failed. This woman wanted me to hand it all over like I was passing her a dinner plate. My voice came out steady, though my legs were shaking. "No." Veronique's smile cracked like cheap porcelain. "What did you say?" I said no. I looked her dead in the eye. "This farm isn't a party favor. It's blood and sweat and 50 years of sacrifice. It's my life." The silence that followed was so thick you could have cut it with a butter knife. Then Veronique's hand flew across my face. The slap echoed through that tent like a gunshot. My head snapped to the side. Pain exploded across my cheek. For a second, the world tilted sideways and I stumbled, reaching for the back of a chair to keep from falling. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone dropped a glass. I heard a woman say, "Oh my God," in a horrified whisper. But what hurt worse than the slap was looking at my son and seeing him do absolutely nothing. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't give Veronique the satisfaction of seeing me broken. Instead, I straightened up slowly, touched my burning cheek, and reached into my purse. My fingers found my phone. I pulled it out, looked at Veronique one last time, and turned away. My sandals crunched against the gravel as I walked out of that tent. Behind me, I could hear confused murmuring, Veronique trying to laugh it off, someone asking if I was okay. When I reached my porch, I sat down in the rocking chair and made one call that would destroy her perfect world. Would you have walked away like I did, or fought back right there? Drop your answer in the comments below. I wasn't always the woman who walked away from her own son's wedding with a bruised face and a burning heart. There was a time when this land meant everything because the people on it meant everything. My name is Ruthleen Morris, and I was born 71 years ago on a patch of sunburned Mississippi dirt that most folks would have called worthless. My mama used to say the earth there was stubborn as a mule and twice as mean. But I loved it anyway. I met Elijah when I was 19 years old at a church social. He had hands rough as tree bark and a smile that could light up the darkest room. He didn't have money, didn't have fancy education. What he had was vision. Ruthleen, he told me on our third date, standing in the middle of an empty field, I'm gonna build something here. Something that'll feed families. Something that'll last. I married him 6 months later in a dress my mama sewed by hand. We worked that land like our lives depended on it, because they did. Elijah would be up before sunrise, and I'd be right there beside him, pregnant with DeMarcus, pulling weeds in the garden while my back ached something fierce. We didn't have tractors at first. We had mules and prayer and stubbornness that wouldn't quit. When DeMarcus was born, Elijah cried. I'd never seen that man shed a tear before, but he held our baby boy in those calloused hands and whispered, "This is what we're building for. This right here." DeMarcus grew up running through cornfields, climbing hay bales, learning to drive the tractor before he could reach the pedals proper. He'd follow his daddy everywhere, wearing Elijah's old hat that swallowed his little head whole. At night, after supper, Elijah would sit him on his knee and tell him stories about the land. "This farm is your inheritance, son," Elijah would say. "Not just the dirt and the crops. The responsibility. The legacy. When I'm gone, you take care of your mama and this place. You hear me?" DeMarcus would nod, his eyes wide and serious. "Yes, sir." I believed him. God help me, I believed every word. The years rolled by like seasons. We expanded the farm, bought more equipment, hired workers during harvest. The Morris family farm became known throughout the county. People respected Elijah. Respected what we'd built from nothing. Then Elijah got sick. Cancer took him slow and mean, eating away at his strength while his spirit stayed fierce. Even on his deathbed, he made DeMarcus promise to protect the land and take care of me. "This farm is your mama's heartbeat," Elijah whispered, his voice barely there. "Don't ever forget that." DeMarcus held his daddy's hand and swore he wouldn't. That was 5 years ago. For the first year after Elijah passed, DeMarcus kept his promise. He came by every week, helped manage the farm business, sat with me on the porch drinking sweet tea and talking about his daddy. We were healing together, the way family should. Then he met Veronique. She showed up at a charity gala in Jackson, all curves and confidence in a red dress that cost more than my monthly grocery bill. She was a lawyer from Atlanta, educated at some fancy university, with a smile that could charm a snake out of its skin. DeMarcus called me the next day, breathless with excitement. "Mama, I met someone special." I was happy for him. Truly. A mother wants her son to find love, to build a family, to be happy. I just didn't know yet that some people don't marry for love. They marry for opportunity. I didn't know then that the hands I raised to tend the soil would one day strike me down. Subscribe if you believe family should protect, not destroy, what they're given. Veronique Langston walked into my life wearing red heels and carrying ambition like a weapon. The first time she visited the farm, she stepped out of DeMarcus's car looking like she'd gotten lost on her way to a photo shoot. Her perfume hit me before she did, expensive and overwhelming, drowning out the honest smell of earth and growing things. "Miss Ruthleen," she squealed, rushing forward to kiss my cheek. "Oh my goodness, I am so honored to finally meet you. DeMarcus has told me everything about this beautiful legacy you've built." The word legacy should have been my first warning. She looked around the property with eyes that calculated value instead of seeing beauty. While DeMarcus showed her the fields, I watched her smile politely and nod, but her fingers were already typing something into her phone. That evening, over dinner at my kitchen table, she complimented everything. My cooking. My home. My charming rustic lifestyle. But compliments from Veronique felt like being petted by someone checking your teeth before a purchase. You must be so tired, she said sweetly, touching my hand. Running this whole operation at your age. Don't you think it's time to rest? Let the younger generation take over. I pulled my hand back gently. I'll rest when the good Lord calls me home, child. Until then, I got work to do. Her smile tightened just a fraction. Most folks wouldn't have noticed. But I was born reading people the way farmers read weather. 6 months into their relationship, Veronique started talking about modernizing the farm. She had ideas about converting the land into an event space, a wedding venue, maybe even a boutique hotel. Think about it, Mama Ruthleen, she'd say during family dinners. This land is sitting here barely making profit. We could triple your income. The land makes what it makes, I'd reply. It feeds people. That's profit enough. She'd laugh like I'd told a cute joke, then change the subject. The real trouble started after DeMarcus proposed. They'd been dating for 8 months when he brought her to Sunday dinner and got down on one knee right there in my living room. I hugged them both, gave my blessing, and prayed their marriage would be built on something stronger than what I was sensing. 2 weeks later, Veronique showed up alone. It was a Tuesday evening. I was in the kitchen making cornbread when I heard her car pull up. Through the window, I watched her get out wearing a business suit, carrying a leather folder. She knocked on my door with that same bright smile. Miss Ruthleen, do you have a moment? There's something important we need to discuss. I let her in, offered her tea. She declined. I want to be direct with you, she said, opening her folder and spreading papers across my kitchen table. DeMarcus and I have been talking with financial advisors and attorneys. We think it's time to put the Morris family farm into a trust. I looked at the papers without touching them. A trust. For tax purposes, she explained, her voice smooth as butter. To protect the assets. To make sure everything's properly managed when the time comes. When I die, you mean? She had the decency to look uncomfortable for half a second. We just want to make sure the family is protected. I sat down across from her, folded my hands, and looked her straight in the eye. Veronique, let me tell you something about this land. My husband and I bought it with nothing but borrowed money and blind faith. We broke our backs making it productive. We nearly lost it twice, once to drought, once to debt. But we held on. I understand that, but I'm not finished. My voice was quiet but firm. This farm has legal protections already in place. Protections Elijah set up before he died. Now, I don't know what you and your lawyer friends have planned, but I'm not signing anything that takes my name off this property. Her face changed. The sweetness drained away like water through a sieve, leaving something cold underneath. You're being unreasonable, she said. I'm being careful. She gathered her papers slowly, her movements tight with controlled anger. When she stood, she looked down at me with eyes that held no warmth at all. Miss Ruthleen, she said softly, don't you think it's time to let the younger generation handle things? You've had your turn. I stayed seated, calm as Sunday morning. The soil don't change ownership just because someone younger wants to walk on it, child. The hands that tilled it decide when to pass it on. Her jaw clenched. She wasn't used to being told no. I could see that clear as day. Women like Veronique went through life getting what they wanted through charm, manipulation, or force. But I'd been saying no to people trying to take my land for 50 years. She walked to the door, then paused. Without turning around, she said, "You'll regret this, old woman." And from that night on, peace left my farm. Comment below. Have you ever trusted someone who later revealed their true face? After that night on my porch, DeMarcus started disappearing. Not physically. He still lived on the property in the house Elijah and I had built for him when he turned 21. But emotionally, spiritually, he became a ghost. Where he used to stop by my place every few days for coffee and conversation, now weeks would pass without a visit. When he did come around, Veronique was always with him, steering the conversation, answering questions I'd asked him, touching his arm whenever he started to relax into being my son again. It was like watching someone drown in slow motion and not being able to reach them. The worst part was watching him change. My DeMarcus, the boy who used to bring me wildflowers from the back 40, who'd sit with me through thunderstorms because he knew I got nervous, was becoming someone I barely recognized. He started dressing different, talking different, using words like portfolio and market value instead of harvest and yield. He'd look at the fields his daddy had planted and see dollar signs instead of legacy. Veronique had him taking business trips to Atlanta, meeting with investors, talking about opportunities. She had him believing the farm was holding him back instead of holding him up. One Saturday morning, about 6 months before the wedding, I saw my grandbabies playing in the yard. Well, I say grandbabies, but they barely knew me anymore. They were Veronique's children from a previous relationship, a 8-year-old girl named Madison and a 6-year-old boy named Christopher. Sweet kids. Polite. But distant, like I was a stranger who happened to live nearby. I came out on the porch with fresh-baked cookies, thinking maybe I could bridge the gap with sugar and love like grandmas are supposed to do. Miss Ruthleen made cookies. I called out. They looked at me, then at each other, uncertain. That's when Veronique came around the corner, her phone pressed to her ear. She saw me standing there with my plate of cookies and her face tightened. Madison, Christopher, time to go, she called out, not even acknowledging me. But Mama, Miss Ruthleen has. Now. She herded those babies to her car like I was contagious. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't say thank you for thinking of them. Just drove off, leaving me standing on my porch holding cookies nobody wanted. I went inside and cried for the first time since Elijah's funeral. The loneliness was crushing. I'd sit in my house at night, eating dinner for one, talking to Elijah's picture on the mantel like he could hear me. They're taking him from me, I'd whisper. Our boy. They're turning him into someone we wouldn't recognize. At church, people started treating me different too. Veronique had made friends with the young professional crowd, the doctors, lawyers, business owners who'd moved to the area from bigger cities. She'd host dinner parties and charity events, always making sure to mention that she was helping poor Mama Ruthleen manage the farm in her old age. Poor. Like I was helpless. Like I hadn't built that farm from dirt and determination. Sister Morrison, who'd known me for 40 years, pulled me aside after service one Sunday. Ruthleen, honey, are you all right? She asked, concern etched in her face. People are saying things. What kind of things? She hesitated. That you're being difficult. That you won't let DeMarcus take over the farm properly. That Veronique's trying to help but you're too proud to accept it. My chest tightened. And you believe that? No, baby. I know you. But not everyone does. That's how Veronique worked. Poison dressed up as concern, gossip disguised as care. The final straw came 3 months before the wedding. DeMarcus showed up at my door on a Tuesday evening, looking uncomfortable. Mama, we need to talk about the wedding, he said, not meeting my eyes. What about it? Veronique wants to have it here on the farm. She thinks it would be special. Meaningful. I should have seen it coming. And what do you think? He shifted his weight. I think it would make her happy. Not it would make us happy. Not it would honor Dad's memory. Just it would make her happy. When did her happiness become more important than your mama's peace? I asked quietly. He flinched like I'd slapped him. That's not fair. Fair? Baby, fair is you remembering who raised you. Fair is you standing up for your mama when your wife treats her like an obstacle instead of family. Veronique doesn't. Yes, she does. I stood up, tired of biting my tongue. That woman has been trying to get her hands on this farm since the day she met you. And you're so blinded by her pretty face and smooth words that you can't see it. Mama, you're wrong about her. Am I? Then why won't she visit me without you? Why does she pull those babies away whenever I try to connect with them? Why is she spreading rumors about me at church? He looked genuinely shocked. She wouldn't do that. Ask her, I said. Go home and ask her. See if she denies it. But I knew he wouldn't. Some men choose their wives over truth, comfort over conviction. He left without another word. 2 days later, Veronique called to graciously inform me that the wedding would be held on the farm whether I liked it or not. After all, DeMarcus lived there. It was technically his right. I didn't argue. What was the point? Instead, I sat on my porch that evening, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and purple, and made a decision. If Veronique wanted to use my farm as a stage for her performance, then let her. But every stage has trapdoors. And I was about to open one beneath her feet. I had no idea that her wedding would become my battlefield. Stay tuned, this is where the story starts to burn. The morning of the wedding, I woke up to the sound of strangers on my land. Trucks rolled up the dirt road before sunrise, carrying tables, chairs, and enough flowers to fill a funeral home. Workers in matching t-shirts swarmed the property like ants, transforming my honest farm into something that belonged in a magazine. They hung golden drapes in my barn, the same barn where Elijah and I had stored hay, repaired equipment, and occasionally slow danced when the work was done and the radio was playing. Now it looked like a ballroom, glittering and fake. They covered my hay bales with white silk and tied ribbons around them. They put out fancy signs directing people to the ceremony site, and the reception area, and the cocktail lounge. They even installed a wooden dance floor over the dirt where Elijah used to park the tractor. I stood on my porch in my nightgown, watching them erase every trace of what this place really was. Miss Ruthleen. A young woman with a clipboard approached me. I'm Jasmine, the wedding coordinator. Just wanted to let you know we'll be done setting up by noon. The ceremony starts at 4. This is still my property, I said quietly. She blinked. I'm sorry. Nothing, baby. You're just doing your job. She smiled relieved, and hurried back to her crew. I went inside and got dressed slowly. I pulled out the lavender dress Elijah had bought me for our 45th anniversary. Simple, elegant, the kind of dress a woman wears when she knows her worth doesn't need announcing. I clasped my gold wedding band, the one I'd worn for 50 years, and put on the small cross necklace Elijah gave me when DeMarcus was born. In the mirror, I looked like myself. Not fancy. Not trying to be something I wasn't. Just Ruthleen Morris, 71 years old, still standing. By 3 o'clock, guests started arriving in luxury cars that kicked up dust on my dirt roads. Women in heels picked their way across the gravel, complaining about the rustic terrain. Men in suits loosened their ties against the Mississippi heat, fanning themselves with the wedding programs. I recognized maybe 10 people out of the 250 who showed up. The rest were Veronique's crowd, Atlanta professionals who'd probably never set foot on a real farm before. I heard one woman say to her husband, "This is so charming. It's like we've stepped back in time." Another replied, "I know. So authentic. I need to get pictures for Instagram." My life's work had become their entertainment. The ceremony itself was beautiful, I'll give Veronique that. She knew how to put on a show. White roses everywhere. A string quartet playing classical music. DeMarcus standing at the altar in a tuxedo that probably cost more than my monthly income. When Veronique walked down the aisle, she looked like a queen claiming her kingdom. Her dress must have cost $10,000, flowing behind her like a river of lace and silk. She smiled at the guests, waved at friends, posed for photographers. She didn't look at me once. The vows were standard. Love, honor, cherish. Till death do us part. DeMarcus's voice cracked when he said, I do, and for a moment, just a moment, I saw my little boy again, the one who used to be afraid of thunderstorms. Then Veronique kissed him and the moment passed. The reception started at 5. They'd set up long tables in the barn, decorated with more flowers and candles than seemed safe around all that old wood. A band played jazz music. Waiters in bow ties carried trays of champagne and fancy appetizers I couldn't pronounce. I sat at a table near the back, alone, watching people celebrate a marriage I wasn't sure would last a year. Sister Morrison found me there. You hanging in there, honey? I'm fine. You don't look fine. I squeezed her hand. I will be. The sun was starting to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, when Veronique took the microphone. The band stopped playing. Conversations died down. Everyone turned toward the stage where she stood, glowing like she'd already won. Before we move to dinner, she announced, her voice carrying across the barn, I'd like to make a special announcement. My stomach dropped. Something in her tone, that edge of triumph hiding under sweetness, made my hands grip the edge of the table. She stepped down from the stage, her eyes locked on mine, and walked straight toward me. The crowd parted. 250 guests turned to watch. I could feel their eyes on me like physical weight. Mama Ruthleen, Veronique said into the microphone, her voice sickeningly sweet, since you've always said this farm is the heart of our family, it's only fair that you hand over the keys, right here, right now, to your son and me. Let's make it official. Time stopped. I heard gasps. Whispers. Someone said, oh my God. But all I could focus on was my son standing beside his wife, his hand on her waist, saying nothing. Not defending me. Not stopping this public humiliation. Nothing. Come on, Mama. Veronique's voice cut through my thoughts. You've held on long enough. Give us your blessing, and hand us the keys. Every eye in that barn bore into me. The microphone picked up my breathing. I thought about Elijah. About promises made and broken. About the difference between family and blood. And I said the one word that would change everything. No. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just walked away and dialed one number. Would you have walked away or fought back right there? Tell me in the comments. The phone rang 3 times before Caleb answered. Hello. His voice was deep, measured, the kind of voice that belonged to a man who thought before he spoke. Caleb, I said quietly, sitting in my rocking chair while 250 guests wondered where I'd gone. It's time. There was a long pause on the other end. I could hear him breathing, thinking, weighing what I was asking him to do. Are you sure, Miss Ruthleen? He finally asked. Once we move forward, there's no going back. I looked out at the land stretching before me in the fading light. The same fields Elijah and I had watered with our sweat. The same soil we'd prayed over during droughts. The same earth that held secrets nobody knew about except the 3 of us. Me, Elijah, and Caleb. I'm sure, I whispered. Caleb had been Elijah's godson, raised by his mama 2 farms over after his daddy ran off. Elijah had taken him under his wing, taught him about farming, about business, about being a man of your word. When Caleb went off to college and got his business degree, Elijah had been proud as any blood father could be. What most folks didn't know was that Caleb managed our legal affairs. The paperwork. The contracts. The quiet dealings that kept a farm running when crops failed and bills came due. And he knew about the oil. Back in 1978, when DeMarcus was just a baby, a man from an energy company came knocking on our door. He had maps and surveys and big promises about what lay beneath our land. "Mr. Morris," he'd said, spreading papers across our kitchen table, "our geological surveys show significant oil deposits under your property. We'd like to lease the mineral rights." Most farmers would have jumped at the chance. Quick money. Easy income. But Elijah wasn't most farmers. "How much are we talking?" he'd asked. The man named a number that made my eyes water. Elijah had looked at me, then back at the man. "We'll think about it." After the man left, Elijah sat me down. "Ruthleen, we could take that money now, or we could wait. Let the land appreciate. Let the oil get more valuable. Then, when we really need it, we make our move." "What if we never need it?" I'd asked. He'd smiled. "Then DeMarcus inherits something nobody can take from him. Security. Real security." So we'd waited. Years passed. We farmed the surface, paid our bills, raised our son. The oil company checked in every few years, their offers growing larger each time. But Elijah always said no. "Not yet," he'd tell them. "When the time's right, I'll call you." That time never came for Elijah. Cancer took him before he could see his patience pay off. But I remembered. And so did Caleb. "The contract's ready," Caleb said now, his voice pulling me back to the present. "I've had it drawn up for months, just waiting for your word. The oil company's been patient, but they're eager. They'll move fast once you sign." "How fast?" "Trucks could be there by Monday morning. They'll need to survey, drill test wells, set up equipment. Miss Ruthleen, once this starts, everyone's going to know. Including DeMarcus. Including her." I thought about Veronique's hand across my face. About my son's silence. About being treated like a problem to be solved instead of a person to be honored. "Let them know," I said firmly. "Let everybody know." "All right then." I could hear papers rustling on his end. "I'll file the paperwork first thing Monday morning. The lease agreement gives you 70% royalties on all oil extracted. The company estimates the first year alone could bring in close to $2 million. $2 million from land Veronique thought was just dirt and nostalgia. "There's one more thing," Caleb said carefully. "The surface rights. They're still yours. You can sell them, lease them, do whatever you want. But Miss Ruthleen, with active oil drilling, nobody's going to want to live there. It won't be a farm anymore. It'll be an industrial site." I closed my eyes. Saying goodbye to the farm meant saying goodbye to Elijah's dream. To 50 years of memories. To every sunrise and sunset we'd shared. But some things matter more than dirt and memories. Like dignity. Like respect. Like teaching people that kindness has limits and patience has an end. "Do it," I said. "File everything. Start the process." "Yes, ma'am." "And Caleb? Thank you. For everything. For being the son Elijah taught you to be." His voice cracked just slightly. "He was a good man, Miss Ruthleen. I'm just trying to honor him." "You are, baby. You truly are." I hung up and sat there in the darkness, listening to music and laughter drifting down from the barn. They were probably cutting the cake by now. Dancing. Taking pictures. Living their best lives while I sat alone with the weight of what I'd just done. Part of me felt guilty. Was I being vindictive? Was this about justice or revenge? But then I remembered the sound of that slap echoing through the tent. The way my son had stood there, letting his wife assault his mother without saying a word. The years of manipulation and disrespect disguised as care. No. This wasn't revenge. This was consequences. I went inside, made myself a cup of tea, and went to bed. Tomorrow was Sunday. I'd go to church, pray for guidance, and prepare for what was coming. Because by Monday morning, Veronique's fairy tale world was going to crack wide open. By dawn, her fairy tale would start to crumble. If you believe patience brings power, don't forget to like and share this story. The phone rang 3 times before Caleb answered. Hello. His voice was deep, measured, the kind of voice that belonged to a man who thought before he spoke. Caleb, I said quietly, sitting in my rocking chair while 250 guests wondered where I'd gone. It's time. There was a long pause on the other end. I could hear him breathing, thinking, weighing what I was asking him to do. Are you sure, Miss Ruthleen? He finally asked. Once we move forward, there's no going back. I looked out at the land stretching before me in the fading light. The same fields Elijah and I had watered with our sweat. The same soil we'd prayed over during droughts. The same earth that held secrets nobody knew about except the 3 of us. Me, Elijah, and Caleb. I'm sure, I whispered. Caleb had been Elijah's godson, raised by his mama 2 farms over after his daddy ran off. Elijah had taken him under his wing, taught him about farming, about business, about being a man of your word. When Caleb went off to college and got his business degree, Elijah had been proud as any blood father could be. What most folks didn't know was that Caleb managed our legal affairs. The paperwork. The contracts. The quiet dealings that kept a farm running when crops failed and bills came due. And he knew about the oil. Back in 1978, when DeMarcus was just a baby, a man from an energy company came knocking on our door. He had maps and surveys and big promises about what lay beneath our land. Mr. Morris, he'd said, spreading papers across our kitchen table, our geological surveys show significant oil deposits under your property. We'd like to lease the mineral rights. Most farmers would have jumped at the chance. Quick money. Easy income. But Elijah wasn't most farmers. How much are we talking? He'd asked. The man named a number that made my eyes water. Elijah had looked at me, then back at the man. We'll think about it. After the man left, Elijah sat me down. Ruthleen, we could take that money now, or we could wait. Let the land appreciate. Let the oil get more valuable. Then, when we really need it, we make our move. What if we never need it? I'd asked. He'd smiled. Then DeMarcus inherits something nobody can take from him. Security. Real security. So we'd waited. Years passed. We farmed the surface, paid our bills, raised our son. The oil company checked in every few years, their offers growing larger each time. But Elijah always said no. Not yet, he'd tell them. When the time's right, I'll call you. That time never came for Elijah. Cancer took him before he could see his patience pay off. But I remembered. And so did Caleb. The contract's ready, Caleb said now, his voice pulling me back to the present. I've had it drawn up for months, just waiting for your word. The oil company's been patient, but they're eager. They'll move fast once you sign. How fast? Trucks could be there by Monday morning. They'll need to survey, drill test wells, set up equipment. Miss Ruthleen, once this starts, everyone's going to know. Including DeMarcus. Including her. I thought about Veronique's hand across my face. About my son's silence. About being treated like a problem to be solved instead of a person to be honored. Let them know, I said firmly. Let everybody know. All right then. I could hear papers rustling on his end. I'll file the paperwork first thing Monday morning. The lease agreement gives you 70% royalties on all oil extracted. The company estimates the first year alone could bring in close to $2 million. $2 million from land Veronique thought was just dirt and nostalgia. There's one more thing, Caleb said carefully. The surface rights. They're still yours. You can sell them, lease them, do whatever you want. But Miss Ruthleen, with active oil drilling, nobody's going to want to live there. It won't be a farm anymore. It'll be an industrial site. I closed my eyes. Saying goodbye to the farm meant saying goodbye to Elijah's dream. To 50 years of memories. To every sunrise and sunset we'd shared. But some things matter more than dirt and memories. Like dignity. Like respect. Like teaching people that kindness has limits and patience has an end. Do it, I said. File everything. Start the process. Yes, ma'am. And Caleb? Thank you. For everything. For being the son Elijah taught you to be. His voice cracked just slightly. He was a good man, Miss Ruthleen. I'm just trying to honor him. You are, baby. You truly are. I hung up and sat there in the darkness, listening to music and laughter drifting down from the barn. They were probably cutting the cake by now. Dancing. Taking pictures. Living their best lives while I sat alone with the weight of what I'd just done. Part of me felt guilty. Was I being vindictive? Was this about justice or revenge? But then I remembered the sound of that slap echoing through the tent. The way my son had stood there, letting his wife assault his mother without saying a word. The years of manipulation and disrespect disguised as care. No. This wasn't revenge. This was consequences. I went inside, made myself a cup of tea, and went to bed. Tomorrow was Sunday. I'd go to church, pray for guidance, and prepare for what was coming. Because by Monday morning, Veronique's fairy tale world was going to crack wide open. By dawn, her fairy tale would start to crumble. If you believe patience brings power, don't forget to like and share this story. 3 days later, DeMarcus showed up at my new place. I'd moved into a small rental house near my sister's church in Jackson. It wasn't much, 2 bedrooms, a tiny porch, a patch of grass that couldn't be called a yard. But it was quiet. Peaceful. Mine. I was watering my potted plants when I heard his truck pull up. He got out slowly, like a man walking to his own funeral, and stood at the bottom of my porch steps. "Mama," he said, "can we talk?" I set down my watering can. "I suppose." He climbed the steps and sat in the chair beside mine. For a long time, neither of us spoke. We just sat there, the way we used to on the farm, watching the world go by. Finally, he broke the silence. "You went too far." I didn't look at him. Did I? "You destroyed the farm. Everything Dad worked for. Everything our family built." Now I turned to face him. "Your daddy worked for security, son. For stability. For the ability to take care of his family no matter what came. That farm wasn't just dirt and crops, it was insurance. And when the time came to cash in that insurance, I did. But why like this? Why so public? Why so cruel? Cruel." My voice rose despite my best efforts to stay calm. "You want to talk about cruel? How about your wife slapping me in front of 250 people while you stood there like a statue? How about years of being treated like I was too old and stupid to manage my own property? How about being pushed aside in my own home? I know she shouldn't have hit you. But you let her." I stood up, my hands shaking. "You let that woman disrespect your mama in front of God and everybody, and you said nothing. Not one word. You just stood there with your hand on her waist like you were posing for a picture." He flinched. I froze. I didn't know what to do. "You knew exactly what to do. You just chose her over me." Tears welled up in his eyes. "She's my wife. And I'm your mama. The woman who carried you for 9 months. Who walked the floor with you when you were sick. Who worked beside your daddy to build something you could inherit. Don't I count for something?" He dropped his head into his hands. "I'm sorry. God, Mama, I'm so sorry." "Sorry doesn't fix it, baby. Sorry doesn't erase the hurt." We sat in silence again. Down the street, children played. A dog barked. Life went on like it always does. "She's leaving me," DeMarcus said quietly. I wasn't surprised. When? She already did. Left 3 days ago. Took the kids, most of the furniture, emptied the joint account. Her lawyer called this morning about divorce papers. "And you're telling me this because you want sympathy or because you finally see who she really was?" He looked up at me with red eyes. "I see it now. Clear as day. She never loved me. She loved what she thought I had. And when that disappeared, so did she. That's a hard lesson to learn." "Did you know?" he asked. "Did you know she'd leave me?" I nodded slowly. "I knew she didn't marry you for love, baby. Women like that don't. They marry for status, security, control. And when those things disappear, they move on to the next opportunity. I should have listened to you." "Yes, you should have. But you're a grown man. You made your choice." He stood up, paced the small porch. "What do I do now, Mama? The farm's being torn up for drilling. Veronique's gone. I lost everything." "No, you haven't," I said firmly. "You lost things. Property. A woman who never deserved you. But you haven't lost yourself. Not yet. It feels like I have." I stood and took his face in my hands the way I used to when he was little. "Listen to me. Your daddy always said a man isn't measured by what he inherits, but by what he builds from nothing. You got nothing right now. That means you got a chance to start building. I don't know how. The same way we did. One day at a time. One honest choice after another. You find work. You save money. You rebuild your character. And maybe if you do it right, you become the man your daddy raised you to be. Will you help me?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to say no. Wanted to let him struggle the way I'd struggled. But he was still my son. Still my baby boy, despite everything. "I won't give you money," I said. "I won't fix your problems. But I'll be here. I'll answer the phone when you call. I'll pray for you. And when you've done the work to rebuild yourself, we'll talk about what comes next." He hugged me then, tight and desperate. "I'm sorry, Mama. For everything." I held him and let him cry. Because sometimes, that's what mamas do. Even when they're hurt. Even when they're angry. Even when their sons don't deserve it. When he finally pulled away, his face was wet with tears. "I got one more question." "What's that?" "The oil money. The royalties. That's a lot of money, Mama. What are you going to do with it?" I smiled for the first time in days. "I'm going to live, baby. Really live. I'm going to travel. Maybe see the ocean. Buy myself nice things without feeling guilty. And whatever's left when I die, well, we'll see who deserves it then." He nodded, accepting the answer for what it was. As he walked back to his truck, I called out, "DeMarcus." He turned around. "Your daddy would want you to know something. He loved you. Always did. Always will. And so do I. But love doesn't mean enabling bad behavior. Sometimes, love means letting people face the consequences of their choices." "I understand." And when he went home that night, he found a letter waiting, her goodbye. If betrayal taught you strength, double tap that like button. 6 months passed like water through a sieve. The oil company moved in with serious intent. They drilled 3 test wells, all of them promising. By month 3, they'd started full-scale extraction. The checks started coming, bigger than I'd ever imagined. The first one alone was enough to buy a house outright. I didn't buy a house, though. I kept my little rental and put the money in accounts Caleb helped me set up. Investment accounts. Trust accounts. Money that would work for me instead of sitting still. For the first time in my 71 years, I wasn't worried about bills. Wasn't stressed about repairs or crop failures or making ends meet. I could breathe. I bought myself a new car. Nothing fancy, just a reliable sedan that didn't make strange noises when I turned corners. I got my hair done at a real salon instead of my sister's kitchen. I bought clothes that fit properly and didn't have patches. But more than the material things, I found peace. I joined a quilting circle at church. Started volunteering at the community center, teaching young folks about gardening and cooking from scratch. I took a trip to the Gulf Coast and saw the ocean for the first time since my honeymoon. Life got smaller in the best way. Quieter. Sweeter. DeMarcus called every week. At first, the conversations were awkward, him reporting on his progress like a child seeking approval, me listening carefully for signs of real change. He got a job at a construction company. Started as basic labor, hauling materials and cleaning sites. The work was hard, humbling for a man who'd thought he was above getting his hands dirty. But he stuck with it. I forgot how good it feels to be tired from real work, he told me one Sunday afternoon. To earn your money instead of expecting it. Your daddy would be proud, I said. You think so? I know so. By month 4, he'd moved into a small apartment. Nothing like the house he'd shared with Veronique, but it was his. Paid for with his own money. No one could take it from him. The divorce went through quickly once Veronique realized there was no money to fight over. She got custody of her kids, which was fine since they'd never really been his anyway, and disappeared back to Atlanta. I heard through the grapevine that she'd already latched onto a new man. Some businessman with family money. She was back to her old tricks, just with a different target. Don't that bother you? Sister Morrison asked me when she shared the gossip. That she just moved on like nothing happened? No, I said honestly. People like that always move on. They're like locusts. They consume everything in one field, then fly to the next. I'm just glad she's someone else's problem now. What did bother me was the farm itself. I drove past it one afternoon, curious to see what had become of the land Elijah and I had loved. The main house was still there, but empty now. DeMarcus had moved out, unable to live with the noise and disruption. The fields were torn up with drilling equipment, roads carved through what used to be corn rows. It didn't look like a farm anymore. It looked like exactly what it was, an industrial site. Part of me grieved for what was lost. The beauty. The simplicity. The memories baked into that soil. But another part of me understood that nothing lasts forever. Land changes. People change. What matters isn't holding onto the past with white knuckles. It's knowing when to let go and what to carry forward. I carried forward Elijah's memory. His wisdom. His love. And I carried forward my own strength. The knowledge that I'd survived betrayal and come out the other side still standing. One Sunday after church, DeMarcus asked if I wanted to have lunch. We went to a little diner that served honest food at honest prices. Nothing fancy, just good. Over fried chicken and collard greens, he said, I've been thinking about going back to school. Maybe getting a degree in business management. Doing things the right way this time. That's good, baby. Real good. I was wondering if maybe you'd help. Not with money, he added quickly. but with guidance. Maybe teach me what Dad knew about running things honestly. I looked at my son across the table. He had lines around his eyes now, marks of stress and hard lessons learned. But there was something else there too: humility, honesty, the beginnings of real character. I'd be honored, I said. We finished our meal talking about the future instead of dwelling on the past. About possibilities instead of regrets. About building instead of destroying. When we walked out to the parking lot, he hugged me tight. I love you, Mama. I know I didn't show it for a while, but I do. I know, baby. I never stopped loving you either. Even when I was angry. Even when I was hurt. That's what family does. We love through the hard times. Thank you for not giving up on me. Never, I said firmly. You're my son. My blood. And blood doesn't quit, even when it should. As I drove home that evening, watching the sun set over Jackson in shades of orange and purple, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not the desperate hope of someone clinging to what used to be, but the quiet hope of someone who knows they've survived the worst and come out stronger. And for the first time in years, I felt peace return to my soul. What's your favorite lesson from Ruth Lean so far? Drop it in the comments. They say time heals all wounds, but I don't think that's quite right. Time doesn't heal. Time just gives you distance. Enough space to look back and see patterns instead of chaos. Enough perspective to understand that some things had to break so better things could grow. It's been 2 years since that wedding. 2 years since Veronique slapped me and I walked away with my dignity intact and a phone call that changed everything. I'm 73 now. Still living in my little rental house near the church. Still driving my reliable sedan. Still volunteering at the community center and teaching young folks about making something from nothing. The oil money keeps coming, regular as sunrise. I don't spend it foolishly. Never been that kind of woman. Most of it goes into investments and savings, building a legacy that can't be slapped away or stolen by someone with a law degree and a pretty smile. DeMarcus finished his degree last spring. Walked across that stage with his head held high, and I cried like he was graduating kindergarten. He's managing a small construction company now, doing honest work, treating people with respect. We have dinner every Sunday. Sometimes at my place, sometimes at his apartment. We talk about his daddy a lot, the good memories, the lessons Elijah taught us, the wisdom we didn't appreciate until it was too late. Last month, DeMarcus started seeing someone new. A schoolteacher named Patricia who grew up on a farm 3 counties over. She's quiet, kind, and when she looks at him, I see real affection instead of calculation. You like her? He asked me after introducing us. Does it matter what I think? I replied, yes, Mama. It matters a lot. I squeezed his hand. Then yes. I like her. She's good people. As for Veronique, I heard she married that businessman from Atlanta. Big society wedding, even bigger prenup. Some people never learn, but that's not my concern anymore. The Morris family farm sold to the oil company outright last year. They wanted full ownership of the land to expand operations, and the price they offered was more than fair. I signed those papers without hesitation. Some folks at church said I was wrong to sell my heritage. That I should have held onto the land for DeMarcus, for future grandchildren, for the sake of family legacy. But here's what I learned: legacy isn't about land. It's about character. About teaching the next generation to stand up for themselves, to demand respect, to know their worth. That's a legacy no one can drill through or pave over. I took some of that sale money and did something Elijah and I had always dreamed about. I went to Paris. Yes, Paris, France. 73 years old, and I finally saw the Eiffel Tower. Ate real French pastries. Walked along the Seine River. I went by myself, And it was glorious. When I got back, Sister Morrison said, "Girl, you living your best life now." And she was right. For the first time in decades, I wasn't living for obligations or other people's expectations. I was living for me. But the sweetest moment came last week. I was at the grocery store, loading bags into my trunk, when I heard a familiar voice. "Miss Ruthleen." I turned around and saw Veronique standing by a luxury car, her designer sunglasses pushed up on her head, her smile forced and uncomfortable. "Hello, Veronique," I said calmly. She looked different. Harder somehow. There were lines around her mouth that hadn't been there before, and her eyes held a weariness that no amount of expensive makeup could hide. "I heard about the farm," she said. "That you sold it." "I did. For a lot of money, I imagine." "Enough." She shifted her weight, her confidence cracking just slightly. "I wanted to say, I wanted to apologize. For how things went. For how I treated you." I studied her face, looking for sincerity. "I'm not sure I found it. You're apologizing because you regret your actions or because you heard about the money?" I asked quietly. She flinched. "That's not fair." "Fair." I set down my grocery bag. "Child, you slapped me in front of 250 people. You spent years trying to steal what I'd spent 50 years building. You turned my son against me and walked away the moment things got hard. So forgive me if I'm not too worried about being fair to you." I was wrong, she said, and for the first time, I heard something real in her voice. "I see that now. I wanted so badly to be someone important, to have security, that I lost sight of basic decency. And I'm sorry." I nodded. "I accept your apology. But that doesn't mean I trust you. And it doesn't mean we're going to be friends." "I understand. I hope you do. I hope you learn from this. I hope you figure out that security doesn't come from other people's property. It comes from your own character. Until you build that, you'll always be searching for the next opportunity, the next person to use." She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "You're right. I know I am. Now if you'll excuse me, I have ice cream in this bag and it's melting." I got in my car and drove away, leaving her standing in that parking lot with her regrets. Later that evening, sitting on my porch with a glass of sweet tea, I thought about revenge. About justice. About the difference between the two. Revenge is loud. It's flashy. It's making someone pay for hurting you. Justice is quiet. It's simply making sure consequences match actions. It's protecting yourself and letting karma do the rest. What I did to Veronique wasn't revenge. It was justice. I didn't destroy her life. I just stopped letting her destroy mine. And that's the lesson I want to leave with whoever hears this story. You don't have to be loud to be powerful. You don't have to fight dirty to win. Sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is walk away and let your silence speak volumes. Sometimes, the sweetest victory is peace itself. Because justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it whispers. And when it whispers through the hands of an old woman who refused to be broken, those who wronged her hear it louder than thunder. If you believe justice doesn't need noise to be effective, share this story with someone who needs strength today. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next supportive love story. Drop your thoughts in the comments and inspire others who might be facing their own battles. Remember, your story matters, and your voice can give someone else the courage to stand up for themselves. Until next time, keep standing tall and never let anyone dim your light.